Louisiana's heat was thick, clinging to my skin like a second layer. The air smelled of damp wood and something old, something that had been left to rot. The Myrtles Plantation stood before me, grand yet unsettling. Massive oak trees loomed over the property, draped in Spanish moss that swayed like ghostly fingers in the humid breeze. It was beautiful, and wrong. The moment I stepped onto the porch, a chill crept down my spine. The air went still. For just a second, everything was silent. No insects, no wind. Only the deep, heavy thump of my own heartbeat. I took another step forward, and that's when I felt it. Eyes. Watching. Unseen but there. I turned my head slightly, glancing at the tall, glass-paneled door. And then I saw it. A shadow, a figure standing just behind me in the reflection. I spun around, pulse hammering. Nothing. Just the empty porch and the flickering glow of the antique lanterns. I turned back to the glass. The shadow was gone, but the feeling remained. And then, so faint I almost didn't hear it. A laugh. Soft. Amused. And far too close. I had read about the Myrtles Plantation before coming here, how it was rumored to be haunted by more than 10 restless spirits. But one name was whispered more than any other. Chloe. She had been a slave girl, forced into an impossible existence. The story goes that she had been caught eavesdropping on her master's business. As punishment, he sliced off her ear. To hide the disfigurement, she wore a green turban, wrapped tightly around her head. But she wanted revenge. They say she poisoned a birthday cake meant for the plantation owner's family. Maybe she only meant to make them sick. Maybe she wanted to remind him of her power. But the dose was too strong. His wife and 2 children died. The other slaves, fearing their own punishment, took justice into their own hands. They hanged Chloe from a tree outside the house. Some say they cut off her other ear before the rope tightened. Her body was discarded, but her spirit remained. Guests have reported seeing her, a shadowy figure wandering the halls, lingering in the mirrors. Others have heard whispers in the dead of night, felt invisible fingers brushing against their skin. I wasn't sure if I believed it. Not yet. But as I stood in the dimly lit hallway, I felt the weight of history pressing down on me. A sudden chill crawled up my spine. I pulled out my phone to check the time. The screen flickered. Then it glitched. The gallery app opened on its own. A new picture. I frowned. I hadn't taken any pictures yet. I clicked on it. It was a photo of me standing right where I was now. And behind me, barely visible in the darkness, was a woman. Her face obscured. But her green turban was unmistakable. The Myrtles Plantation had one object that disturbed visitors more than anything else. A massive antique mirror in the main hallway. It was said that after the plantation owner's wife and children were poisoned, their souls got trapped inside it. Guests had reported seeing shadowy figures, handprints that wouldn't wipe away, and reflections that didn't belong to them. I wasn't superstitious, but as I stood before the mirror, unease settled deep in my chest. I ran a hand over the old wooden frame, my fingers trembling slightly. Nothing. Just my own reflection staring back. Then, a handprint appeared on the glass. Small. Like a child's. It formed slowly, the condensation spreading outward as if something was pressing from the inside. I exhaled sharply, stepping back. Then a whisper. Don't look away. The voice wasn't behind me. It came from inside the mirror. My reflection was still staring at me, but something was off. The way it held its shoulders. The unnatural stiffness. And then, it smiled. Not a normal smile. Too wide. Too stretched. I hadn't moved my lips. The blood in my veins turned to ice. I lifted a shaking hand, testing my reflection. It followed, for a second. Then, it didn't. It just stood there grinning. And then, slowly, its hand began to rise. But mine stayed at my side. I stumbled backward, my breath caught in my throat. The reflection's hand pressed against the glass. Then, the fingers pushed through. The mirror's surface rippled like water. And something from the other side was reaching for me. I ran from the mirror, my pulse hammering. My reflection. It wasn't mine anymore. I needed to clear my head. Needed to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. So I wandered deeper into the house. That's when I found the children's bedroom. The room was frozen in time. Tiny beds with lace covers, an old wooden cradle near the window, faded toys scattered across a dusty rug. I stepped inside. The air was heavy, thick with something unseen. Then I heard it, a soft creak. The cradle was rocking by itself. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. A faint giggle echoed through the room. High-pitched, playful. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I turned slowly, scanning the shadows. No one was there. Then the door slammed shut behind me. I rushed to it, gripping the handle, yanking hard. Locked. A chill wrapped around my ankles. I looked down. Tiny, pale fingers curled around my legs. I screamed, kicking wildly. The touch was ice cold, like the grip of something that had been buried for centuries. I staggered back, nearly tripping over a small wooden chair. My heart pounded as I pressed my back against the wall. Then footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from behind me. I turned my head slightly, dreading what I might see. The old portraits on the wall, paintings of the original plantation owners, were staring at me. But their eyes were moving, following me. And then all at once, they smiled. I bolted from the children's room, gasping for air. My legs felt weak, my hands trembling. But the plantation wouldn't let me go. The halls seemed longer. The doors led to the wrong places. Every turn brought me back to where I started. And then, I found myself standing in front of the mirror again. The massive antique glass stretched from floor to ceiling, its gilded frame glowing in the dim light. I didn't want to look, but I had to. My reflection stood there, stiff, expressionless, and then, it moved on its own. My breath hitched. My real body wasn't moving, but the reflection? It raised a hand. Then its lips parted, whispering something I couldn't hear. I took a step back. My reflection stayed where it was. Then I saw her. Behind me, a tall figure, draped in a faded dress, her head wrapped in a green turban. Chloe. Her eyes were sunken voids, black as ink. Her mouth twisted into a grin too wide for her face. "I never left," she whispered. The lights flickered violently. The air turned ice cold. And then, she reached through the mirror. Her cold, dead fingers latched onto my throat, squeezing. I gasped, clawing at my neck, struggling to break free. My vision blurred. The walls around me seemed to shift, bending and twisting as the house itself pulsed with an unseen force. I was suffocating. Then, I caught a glimpse of the mirror again. There was something else inside it. A dozen shadowy figures stood behind my reflection. Hollow-eyed, expressionless, watching, waiting. I thrashed against the invisible grip choking me, my fingers scraping at cold, airless nothing. My lungs burned. My vision flickered. Then, darkness exploded around me. Chloe vanished. The pressure on my throat lifted and I collapsed to the floor, coughing, gasping for breath. But I wasn't alone. The house was waking up. The floorboards groaned under unseen footsteps. The walls creaked as if breathing. The air vibrated with an eerie, whispering chorus, voices overlapping, chanting words I couldn't understand. And then I heard it, a single, deliberate footstep behind me. I turned. The dining room door stood open now, where before it had been shut. The long wooden table stretched out before me, candlelight flickering in the dusty chandelier above. Plates were set, food left untouched, like a meal frozen in time. And seated in the chairs, figures, hazy, transparent bodies, dressed in 19th century clothing, faces gaunt, eyes sunken, every single one of them staring at me. I backed away. One of them moved. A child. A little girl in a faded blue dress. Her mouth opened, lips forming silent words. Then, a spoon lifted from the table and slammed into the floor. I spun, heart racing. The air grew thick, suffocating. Shadows flickered along the walls, twisting, growing. Then, a chair slid backward on its own. Then another. Then all of them. The figures stood up and started walking toward me. Their hollow eyes locked onto mine. Their mouths opened. No sound came out, just a horrible, choking rattle. The plantation didn't just remember the dead. It was keeping them. And it wanted to keep me too. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest like a drumbeat of impending doom. The ghostly figures crept closer, their movements slow and deliberate. The temperature had dropped drastically. My breath came out in foggy clouds. The house itself seemed to be alive, the very walls closing in around me, pulsating with the sound of countless whispers. I turned and ran. Fast, faster than I had ever moved in my life. The hallway stretched before me, doors slamming shut one after another as I bolted past. It was like the house was shifting, trapping me inside. I reached the front door. Locked. I fumbled with the knob, my fingers slick with sweat and panic. The house groaned in response, the wood of the door trembling beneath my touch, as if it were alive, unwilling to release me. I kicked at the door in desperation. It wouldn't budge. I reached for my phone. The screen was dark. The signal was dead. I was trapped. The figures behind me were drawing closer, their pale faces twisted in expressions of hunger. The child's face, once innocent, now looked distorted, its features warped in a grotesque smile. The woman in a long, tattered dress reached out a hand toward me, fingers long and jagged. I had to get out. I couldn't let them catch me. I couldn't. I ran again, this time toward the window. I threw my shoulder into it, the glass rattling under the force. The sound of shattering glass filled the air, followed by the sickening rush of cold night air. I dove through the window. The ground was hard. My shoulder slammed into the earth and I rolled to the side, gasping for breath. I lay there for a moment, my body aching, my mind scrambling to comprehend what was happening. I scrambled to my feet and looked back at the house. The Myrtles Plantation stood silent. No movement. No sound. It looked empty. But I knew better. I turned away, running across the yard toward the trees. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My legs felt like they were on fire, my breath ragged, but I pushed myself forward. I had to get away. I reached the end of the long driveway, the front gates finally in sight. I glanced back one final time. The plantation was just a shadow in the distance. But as I stood there, something moved in the window. Chloe. Her face. Her smile, twisted and sickly, peered out at me from the darkness. She was watching me. My phone buzzed. I pulled it from my pocket, trembling. A new photo had just appeared. It was a picture of me, standing in the children's room. But my eyes were missing. Empty sockets stared back at me from the screen. I wasn't free. That night, I lay in bed at the hotel, desperately trying to convince myself that it was all just a nightmare. I hadn't really seen those things, felt those hands around my throat. But at 3:33 a.m., my phone buzzed again. I stared at it, frozen in terror. A new video. I pressed play. The familiar mirror from Myrtles Plantation filled the screen. A shadowy figure, wearing a green turban, stepped into view. The video ended. Then a voice whispered in my ear. You took my place. And I knew deep down that the nightmare would never end.